One of my all-time favorite guests is back on the show, and somebody who I'm happy to say is about to become, we found out a week ago, a two-time WWE Hall of Famer. X-Pac is back. What's going on, man? What's the haps?
What's up, Sam? Hey, man. You trim your beard.
Well, yeah. The WWE has those Maestros people come in, and so they took because it was just getting like Bushman wild, and so
Yeah.
they trimmed it down on the sides and kind of let it grow longer. Like at some point, I'm gonna shave my head, and I want to stand next to Hunter and just look like they put Hunter in a dryer, and here's me,
When you were eating, was like hair getting in your mouth while you were eating?
Yeah, I mean, even to this day, in the morning, I'll have like a green juice or something, and my wife has to stop me before I go out because she's like, "You got smoothie in your mustache." I mean, I remember, I think like a year ago, maybe less than a year ago, we talked. It might have been the last time you were on, and when we turned on the Skype, you said you were jealous of my beard, but I look at you now, and the growth has been tremendous in I feel like a very short time.
Yeah. And a part of it, I can credit to you. You inspired me.
Who would have thought? You talk about childhood dreams coming true. That's incredible. That's as long as I can inspire people. Well, speaking of inspiring, man, I mean, I remember not too long ago, a few years back, I think that you questioned ever getting into the Hall of Fame or anything like that. I mean, there was a period of time where I feel like, and I don't know if you felt the same way, that when WWE would put the spotlight on the nWo or DX or whoever it was, X-Pac would not be at the forefront in reflecting on the story. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it seems like everything has changed full circle in a positive way to better reflect what was actually happening in that era, the era of DX, and now, the era of nWo.
Yeah, and it's not because it had to do with like all the things I did outside the ring.
Yeah.
After I obviously, I mean, we're not. It's like not. Let's cut the cagles here. It's because of that,
Right.
and rightfully so. I mean, sort of.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not a history book. At the end of the day, it's yeah.
Doesn't mean it didn't hurt, Sam.
Yeah.
To see yourself erased and the things you did, erased. But I wasn't out there representing the industry very well.
Right. Yeah, and that's a big deal, especially when people love finding the kind of disastrous results of people in the industry for whatever reason. Like, people who don't like wrestling do not like talking about wrestling except when it's a horrible story of somebody gone wrong, and they blame the industry at that point as opposed to kind of digging into the actual human beings that this is happening to.
Right. And see, I think I've talked about it with you even, about, the people blaming the industry, and it's not like the industry or the culture, that at least in the past, didn't bear some blame, but we bring, like, most of us that have had huge problems once we've gotten in the industry. We brought bags with us. We brought the baggage with us, and I just think that part of it has been overlooked so much.
Yeah.
Or just totally not even acknowledged.
Yeah, I agree.
So everyone was, totally like everyone came in with a clean slate, and all the trauma and all the fucked up shit happened once they got into business. Usually not.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like it's unique to wrestling either. It's like the same thing that drives people to want to be well known, want to be famous, want to be in front of an audience, want adulation and applause, is the same thing that can lead a lot of people to take advantage of bad behavior when it's in front of their face. That's the personality type, right? But yeah.
Yeah, because So there's something to be said about attention.
Yeah.
Oh, like once you're used to the attention,
Yeah.
and then you don't have it anymore, you'll take it any way you can get it. Whether
Right.
it's, for bad reasons or good reasons.
Right. Right. That makes sense. Well, I mean,
Absolutely true, 1,000%.
yeah. The fact that you've come out of that to this extent, to the point where now, so let's talk about it, because we talked a whole bunch in the last year. I think we talked before the Hall of Fame and after the Hall of Fame about going in as part of DX and what a moment it was. You talked about how difficult it was and the stage fright and everything. But when you find out that you're going in again this year, like it feels like you're just coming off of this high of going in with your best friends, only to find out months later that you get to go in again this year with your other best friends, Hall and Nash. What was, first of all, when did you find out? Because for all of us to be finding out now is way earlier than usual.
And we found out like three weeks earlier. Yeah, so we had to sit on that info for 3 weeks.
Do you know why they decided this year to go ahead and announce you guys and Batista early? Was it just like, hey, we're putting tickets on sale and we want... Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yes, tickets, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, they're like, we got this Hall of Fame thing. I'd like to know what I'm buying tickets to. How did you feel when you found out? They're like, we're putting the NWO in and you're going in. Did they tell you these are the 4, we're putting 4 people in and you're one of them? Or did they just say you're going in and we'll tell you who the rest of them are?
No, I mean, it was, Carano called me and you heard me on my show, right? You listened to my show.
Of course.
Day, right?
Yeah.
You used to be, you get a call from talent relations, it's from talent relations. It's like, oh, fuck, what did I do? It's usually not great news, right? It's like they want you to do something you don't want to do, or you did something that they don't want you to do, or, fine, whatever. But I answered, and, because, I mean, those days are long past, but it's still that trauma comes up whenever you see the phone. It's like, ah.
Yeah, when that 203 area code pops up, you're like, ah.
No, but so I answered, and Carano just told me, "Are you going in the Hall of Fame again?" And honestly, I started laughing. Because how ridiculous. Like, okay, 2 years in a row?
Yeah.
2 times, but 2 years in a row?
Yeah, I mean, is that like, because I was listening to you two on your show, and you were on X-Pac 12360, which is on YouTube, and it's on, you can get the audio of it on iTunes and everything else. All you have to do is type in X-Pac 12360. You can find it on the video on YouTube, the audio everywhere you get podcasts. And you were saying that, like, you kind of had this moment on your show where you had to take a pause because you couldn't believe your life, like how crazy it is that this is happening to you. Is there a part of you, because I know, like, for me, when good things happen, 3/4 of me is like happy about it, and like, I know I worked my ass off for this and blah blah blah, but then there's at least 25%, if not more, sometimes it's a lot more than 25%, that's sitting there going, I don't deserve this. Like, they're gonna find, I shouldn't be here, this is ridiculous.
But I mean, it's kind of that, but it's just like, it's more how me out of billions of people necessarily, then I don't deserve this.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people that don't get.
Yeah. And you're not just talking about the Hall of Fame, you're talking about the whole life. Yeah.
Yeah, life, man.
Yeah.
Like, forget the Hall of Fame. Just like any of these blessings. It's just insane to me, like.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it is nuts. And I mean, yeah, I feel like that's what the second Hall of Fame induction will do to you. Like, the second Hall of Fame induction is that moment where you're like, whoa. Like, now you can really reflect on kind of everything and go, this is a crazy life.
Yeah. Yeah, and just like the ups and downs and like, for a while there, people were 100% sure they knew how my story was going to end.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought that might be the case too.
Yeah, so. I mean, I was about to say, at one point in your life, you were one of those people that knew how your life was how your story was going to end.
Yeah, right. So, Yeah, no, I'm blown away by all of it, and I'm just, um, I don't know, man. Now that like you and I are talking about this, it's just like, and because I said on my show, it's just like billions of people,
Yeah.
you know, and just why us? Not
Yeah.
just me, Sam. You, man. Look at you.
I mean, yeah,
You have your dream job.
yeah, you think about it, and it really is like you start thinking about it, and you're going, there is no difference between me and that other person who wanted this. Like you're like, yeah, I worked, but so did people work all the time. Like a lot of people work for this. Like, what is the thing that made you have this dream life that made this other person it just didn't happen? Is it because they quit too early? Is it because right place, right time? Is it just every single star has to align? I mean, part of it, look, you have to understand that for you, part of it is because you're a good person. Like, you don't survive. When you're talking about your story specifically, you don't survive everything that you went through without people throughout your life that have been like, no, 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 he's worth helping. Like, there are plenty of people that are assholes that they just don't get the help because nobody wants to help them. They don't deserve it, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to take your word for it. I don't go around saying, "Hey, I'm a great person." I'm just,
Yeah.
I feel I am now. Like the way I view myself is a lot different now. You know, I mean, I know I'm still flawed, but I feel like I'm a good person, and and
Yeah.
so yeah, I agree with you. It helps, right?
Yeah.
But the thing I was thinking about this, Sam, is like, you know, we both have worked really hard.
Yeah.
Where we are, all of that. You know, the proper attitude. Not that my attitude's been the best at times, but when it counted. But there's a lot of people that have worked way harder than us, Sam.
Yeah.
Way more than we are, and
Yeah.
it didn't happen for them.
Yeah. You're 100% right. Yeah. I mean, it's not like, it's not one of those things that you could just sit there and give yourself a pat on the back for because, well, I did it and I deserve it. And if they deserved it, they would be here too. That's not always the case, is it?
No.
Yeah.
I just think it should make people, when they do get it, like appreciate it that much more and be that much more grateful. That's all. I don't mean to sound corny here, man. It's just
no. I mean,
just by this whole like life of mine.
Yeah, it's wild, man. It's wild. So
Yeah.
it made me think about the NWO too, because I feel like over the years, because of how big DX got and was and is and evolved, right? And because of how successful, like, let's be honest, like, DX did come after the NWO, but at the end of the day, the founding members of DX are Shawn Michaels and Triple H, and the winners get to tell the story of history, right? So DX has this forever spot. It's also DX is a WWE creation, and at the end of the day, the WWE was the winner of that whole situation. I think the Clique also has this huge spot in the story of wrestling, especially in that era, but the Clique also, I think, comes above the NWO when these stories have been told more recently and when history's told. And the Clique, I feel like, gets connected to DX, but not as much the NWO. And in reality, the NWO needs to be in that conversation with everything. I mean, if any faction changed wrestling in the 90s, it was the NWO.
Whole thing.
Yeah, the whole everything.
So like you're talking about, Sam, is a lot of people, they either don't know or they just don't know. Maybe they know or wherever, and they just don't see it this way. But the whole NWO, all of it came from the Clique. DX, NWO, it all came from the Clique.
So that's what I was saying on my podcast this week when I was talking about the whole, like, the controversy that's been online about you being the fourth member of the NWO going into the Hall of Fame, and some people either think it should be somebody.
I wish they wouldn't have put it that way, like the four original member, because like it took me a while to get there.
Right.
Originally it might have ended up I was the first person to show up. and then Scott, and then Kev. That's how it very well may have if I hadn't have missed my window of opportunity on my 90-day notice.
So that's the story that like you had spoken. So what's the story, right? I mean, I know the kind of basics, and I know you covered it on your podcast too, but I feel like people don't really know. I mean, I feel like the sort of collective thinking is that Hall and Nash left, went to WCW, and then you followed suit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah, and that's how it happened. But what happened, is I was out here in LA, and I met with Barry Bloom, the super agent Barry Bloom, to talk about some movie roles, potential movie roles. And, he brought up to me, everything going on with WCW and Bischoff, getting the power of the purse. And we never thought about leaving. We never thought about leaving. We complained a lot about conditions and business being down and, creative and all that, but never did we think about the actual leaving. And Eric said that, and I got on the phone with Scott, and that started the whole thing. Just to make a long story short.
Right. You were like, this thing's going on over here. And the story that you told on your podcast was that you have 90 days to let, at the time, you had 90 days to let the company know you weren't going to be renewing your contract. And if you didn't let them know in that time frame, then your contract automatically rolled over. And that's what happened.
Yeah. And they knew I wanted to leave. So I was fucked.
Yeah.
Like I was telling everyone, that's when, Scott's leaving. He has the last pay-per-view match leaving, and usually they put the guy over on the way out.
Right.
And he beat me and put me in a diaper.
Right. His last match on pay-per-view was the diaper match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in the diaper, and I'm the one staying.
So at that point, at the point of the diaper match, did you know, obviously you're trying to leave because you know what's going on over in WCW. Did you know when?
Okay, listen.
Yeah.
By the time of the diaper match,
yeah,
I knew I was stuck. I knew I wasn't fucking going anywhere.
So you're sitting there and you're standing in the ring, because I remember the visual. I remember like it was yesterday. I'm a little kid watching because I was a 1, 2, 3 Kid fan, and I'm sitting there, and you're doing your best. You're crying. You got the diaper on. You're baby powdered. The whole thing has happened. In your head, are you going, "Oh my God, I'm sitting here in a diaper with baby powder on. The company knows I want to leave, and all my friends are leaving."
Yes. Well, not all of them. Scott,
I guess Sean and Hunter were still there, but really, yeah, I mean, you don't know once if you've got a 5-person group and 2 of them are leaving, who knows what's going to happen there, right?
At the time, I was just so like, oh, they're not using me good, and I wasn't getting paid. I was in the clique, but you're not,
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm getting paid anymore. It's just
right
in the clique.
Right. Yeah. You get to throw up the hand gesture. That's it.
So, that was that, and just and at the time, man, I just assumed it was all their fault. Like they were just screwing me. It had nothing to do with me being fucked up all the time, or anything like that. So.
Right. Yeah. Or the fact that
figured if I went there, everything would be perfect.
Right, that's all. Yeah, that was the only issue. It was just, don't worry, everything that's going wrong now, it's somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I got healthy, and then I went. And
yeah.
The thing is I made way more money when I got to WCW. So that was a life changer for me. Changed my life.
Right, because then when you go back to WWE, it's not like you're going back for 1, 2, 3 Kid money. You're going back for the money that you're making now.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So, obviously, you came in as Six, the 6th member of the NWO. Your name is Six. That's pretty clear. But to me, I was saying that I feel like anybody that was around watching that era, first of all, I think that one of the reasons why the NWO is not remembered, and they're remembered pretty strongly, but I still think that the NWO is a little bit undervalued in history. And I think that part of that is because what a mess it became. Like, you got out at the end of the day while the getting was good. Like, you were only there for a year. You know, I think that the fact that DX always, at least to some level, stayed cool, and the NWO got so watered down and lame that people can't just separate that last part and just focus on, I mean, that first year of the NWO was like nothing else in wrestling. I remember sitting there as like a diehard WWE fan. Now, I mean, I watched Nitro to see what was on maybe, but it was like WWE was my thing. And I still wasn't a WCW fan, but I was an NWO fan. Like, I was just a fan of the NWO. And there's never been a faction like that got so big, for better or worse, that it was, I mean, the NWO was bigger than WCW in that year. In that year, maybe first year and a half before it got sort of muddled and messy. But, you know, I was talking on my podcast that I think a couple things cement for me, like, there's no doubt in my mind that you are, when you're talking about the core members, not the order in which they joined, but the core members of the NWO. I feel like if they wanted to put Hall, Nash, and Hogan in the Hall of Fame, just the three of them, I'm going, okay, you know, I get that. The Bash of the Beach trio, like, you know, makes sense. But if they're going to add a fourth member, I think that for several reasons, but like, no matter what anybody says, the NWO was a representation of WWE invading WCW. I know that they try to say that it wasn't, but it definitely was. And you being there, I guess, technically Ted DiBiase was coming from WWE, and he was the fifth member, but he wasn't wrestling anymore. He was a manager, even though you guys didn't really need a manager. Like, you were the next wrestler who came over from WWE, got in the ring. The fact that the NWO was a branch off of the Clique, you're a Clique member. Everybody knows Hall, Nash, Kid.
Yep.
Like, that's a thing. And
we were the Wolfpack.
Right.
In the NWO, we were the Wolfpack.
Right.
Inside the NWO.
Right. And I also think that people don't remember, and you brought this up, but I feel like the people on your show, maybe, I mean, I'm probably older than them, so they probably don't really remember. But that 6-ball t-shirt was like the shirt. I had 3 NWO shirts. I had the original NWO shirt. I had the Outsider shirt, the first one with the picture of Scott and Kevin on it. And then I bought another NWO logo shirt. And the only difference was the 6-ball was on the back, but I had to have that one too.
They had.
Huh?
It was the biggest selling shirt they had once it came out.
I'm sure. I mean, I remember it was just
close. And I gotta be honest, like, so I don't know if you remember after I got hurt and I'm out, like, you know, every week they did the big all the NWO guys in the ring.
Yeah.
And Hogan's talk and Scott's doing a survey, yada yada. And like every week, Scott made everyone wear a 6-ball shirt. And
that's awesome.
Hogan or Mach or Dream, you know, Dusty. Somebody shouting out to me every week, keeping me alive, keeping my name alive. Every week.
So cool. And that's just them doing it. That's just Scott going like, no, we're going to do this. I remember Scott used to wear the shirt backwards on TV.
Oh, yeah.
He'd have the 6-ball in the front just so everybody knew.
Tyson style it and then, flip it around.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I mean, do you even realize at the time how big that is that Scott and Kevin were doing that type of stuff for you? I mean, I'm sure you can look back now as an older person and go like, oh my God, how far out of their way they went to make sure that I was taken care of.
Absolutely. Which made it when I ended up, like, because I was away for almost a year, you know, like 10, 11 months before I showed back up at, you know, WWE.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have thought it because they were talking about me every week and, you know, shouting me out every week. So I was still fresh on WCW TV in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in my mind's eye, I wouldn't have thought that you were off WCW for 10 months before you showed up on Raw. I would have said like 2 months, maybe. Yeah. And I'm sure that that's because you were present. Because, yeah, I mean, the NWO was cutting full group, full segment length promos on every single episode of Nitro, sometimes 2 or 3 times an episode.
And also, the live events, all the house shows.
Yeah.
You're not getting Hogan. You're not getting Mach. You're not getting DiBiase. You're getting Scott. You're getting Kev, and you're getting me.
Yeah.
You would get, like maybe Buff or Norton once they added those guys or whatever. But mostly those guys stayed in Japan.
Right.
They were holding it down in Japan. They were a big deal over there.
The NWO Japan.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
they need to be recognized for that too.
I think they should. I think they should. Yeah. And I remember, I mean, even like, it was funny because when like Muta and like Chono would come over and be on Nitro and they'd be representing NWO Japan, I'd be like, yeah, those guys are awesome too. Just because it was like, yeah, like I'm down with NWO throughout the world.
And I go have a match in Osaka Dome.
Yeah.
And I team with nWo Sting.
Uh-huh.
And he's more over than I am. Because he's like getting over, like as part of NWO Japan.
That's awesome. So NWO Sting, all the times that he wasn't on WCW TV was just, because they didn't even have Sting in Japan. So how could NWO Sting be that big of a deal?
Because he was part of the NWO.
That's it, I guess. That's it. You were also, yeah. I mean, I was thinking about too. This is the other thing that I brought up on my podcast was not only the foundation from WWE, the foundation from the Click, the T-shirt, but also when you think about like the actual wrestling part of the NWO, like there aren't that many spectacular matches from the NWO era. Like, I think generally, and we've talked about them.
There wasn't a lot of, 5-star match having NWO members. They were just big stars.
Right, exactly.
Thing.
Exactly. But there were like the Outsiders and the tag matches were always cool. But then WCW didn't have any tag teams, so it'd be like the Outsiders were the biggest stars in the world, and then they'd have like the Meng the Barbarian or whatever, and it's like all due respect to Meng the Barbarian, but they are doing what it is that they do. They're not doing 5-star matches either. But you brought in. Go ahead.
I got the feud. I had a really cool feud with Ric Flair.
Yes, I mean
it was so good.
That was that was the same era when you guys did the Horseman skit, and you got to play Ric Flair like crying and yeah.
He wanted to kill me way before that.
So you were legit getting under Flair's skin during that time?
Oh yeah. I got told this story, but I'll tell you real quick. Like it was over the Slamboree 6-man with Kevin, with Green and Piper and Flair, and they wanted maybe all of them, but at least Flair and Piper for sure, or Flair protested me being in the match. They wanted Hogan in it. It would have been a bigger deal, but like the match wouldn't have been as good.
Right.
And when I found that out, it really pissed me off. And it lit a fire under my ass, and it brought a lot out of me on the mic and and all that. And some of the things I said was pretty disrespectful.
But that's part of it.
I slapped him in the face on TV. That wasn't supposed to happen, Don't slap that in the face.
Yeah, no. But I mean, that was also that was part of the thing. That was also the problem with WCW was that there was a whole section of the audience that at the time, they didn't want to see the guys that had been wrestling forever. They didn't want to see the legends. They didn't want to see like the established stars. They wanted to see these new, edgy young guys. And when you're in high school and you see somebody like you who's, got the long hair and the bandana and the sunglasses and looking cool and slapping legends in the face and being disrespectful to Piper, it's like, it's not nice, but it's cool.
Yeah.
Yep. Especially at the time, it was not like the mid to late 90s were not, the youth of the mid to late 90s were not as kind as the youth is today.
Brutal, right?
Brutal. Brutal.
Think about it, and I'm like, oh.
But it was what it was. Yeah, exactly. You were the poster boy. I mean, you also though. I mean, when you talk about like actual wrestling, the sold out Eddie Guerrero ladder match was by far the best match on that pay-per-view. The matches you had with like Dean Malenko in the cruiserweight division, like there was this other side of it where all of a sudden there was an NWO guy having great matches, and the cruiserweight division was important because the cruiserweight division, whether WCW was going to do anything with it or not, it had a lot of eyes on it. I mean, to this day, the stars are still talked about. And so the fact that somebody like you was able to hang in the main event with Ric Flair, but also be kind of flexible enough where you could exist in the cruiserweight division and have really good matches in the middle of a pay-per-view as well, became a huge asset, I think, and like created a much more well-roundedness with what the NWO was.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll let you say that. I don't want to, say, I don't know if you've heard me say this before, but it's always better when somebody else toots your horn.
yeah. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to toot your horn.
Toot their own. So I just have always felt funny about that, but I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah, good. That's probably the smartest tack to take. Was there anybody, who was your favorite opponent in that era? Like, who would you look at and see on the card and go like, okay, we're gonna have fun tonight, or we're gonna have a good match tonight, or whatever?
Wow, that's a good question. It wasn't like, okay, we had a house. We didn't have a lot of long house show runs in CW, so it's not like we could get like a series of matches with the same people. But I had some good live event matches, some good house show matches with Dean Malenko, Flair, and like I worked with him in the Spectrum.
So like with Flair, even though you knew that he hated you in real life, like you knew, like he was pissed at you just for being there, you'd still go out there and like you'd still have great matches.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it didn't matter, and I didn't like him either at the time. But I loved the idea of being in there with the Nature Boy Ric Flair. It was amazing.
Sure.
That's separate, man.
Yeah.
That's fucking Nature Boy, and he's the greatest of all time, and I'm in there with him.
That's so weird about that's I feel like that's unique to wrestling. What'd you say?
I'm calling the matches because he wouldn't be a babyface. Like if I let him call the match, he'd make himself the heel in the match.
Wow.
So like, call it.
Wow, that's nuts. And it really is unique to wrestling too, where like you're having trouble personally with somebody as that human being, but then when it comes to getting in the like the icon that is Ric Flair really doesn't interfere with the person that is Ric Flair. You know what I mean?
Tell you why he trusted me, because I always had really good ideas to make him look good, and when he heard them, it was hard to argue with them.
Right, like he'd be
him up, man. The reaction is that's Ric Flair, man. They love him so much out there. It's so easy to build a match around Rick.
Right.
He just got to do it.
But that's interesting though. Like as much as they love him at the time, Ric Flair would just go back to the kind of conventions of trying to get them to boo him.
Yes. Just out of habit.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he did it for so long.
God's truth with Nate.
Have you thought
like anyone that has worked with him in that capacity, with him the babyface and they're the heel, they'll tell you the same thing.
Was there any time working with him that you were like maybe in the beginning, were you nervous about calling the match with Rick, or did you have enough confidence in yourself as a performer that even Ric Flair wasn't going to intimidate you?
I was confident. When I got there, I was really confident. When you were on the grind like we were up there, I had no problems whatsoever throwing my ideas out there and like saying this is how it needs to be done at all.
That's good. And I'm sure that's the only way to succeed too. If you're sitting there like, timid, it's not going to work out, is it?
Yeah, I was very confident and sure of myself when I threw things out there idea wise, and most of the time it seemed like the better idea.
Have you thought at all?
I'm not just talking about with Nate. I'm just
Of
talking about in
course.
general.
Yeah.
You know,
Have you thought at all about what it would actually look like to have every living member of the NWO on stage at the Hall of Fame? Because I'm sitting there like thinking about like if they just were like, screw it, let's let everybody get on stage. NWO, Wolfpack, LWO, NWO Silver, WWE NWO. Just throw everybody on stage. Maybe not everybody gets a ring, but everybody gets to at least be on stage in that moment. Like, I think it would be great if you four are on stage, you do your little speeches. First of all, I hope that, Scott, I almost feel bad for Scott because he probably has, I think he definitely has, the best Hall of Fame speech of all time.
right.
And so the fact that he has to give another one now is like, well, what do you want? What are you talking? It was perfect. Why would you make me mess with that? But have you at all thought about, like, you all do your thing, and then at the very end go, like, give it up for the NWO. And I mean, everybody comes out. Jeff Jarrett comes out, and Scott Norton comes out, and Nick Patrick comes out. Everybody comes out.
Huh. That's not a bad idea at all.
I think it'd be awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to happen, but, I definitely at least thought it would be right to, mention some of the names of the people that, that really helped make, I mean, a lot of those guys, everyone that put on a shirt contributed.
Yeah.
As convoluted as it all got and watered down, they still contributed, man.
And it's a part of history. I mean, it's you can't just pick and choose with history. It's a part of history, and it's like, when, all due respect, when is NWO Sting going to get to have a platform like that? Even Scott Norton, like, as much as he's incredible, he's not getting into the WWE Hall of Fame. Like, I'm sure every single person would love just to have that one moment where they can just stand there and feel the energy one more time.
Yeah.
I think it'd be great. Have you?
I was just thinking, like, and here I get two.
It goes back to where we started, right? Like, yeah. Have you thought at all about? Because I remember we were talking after last year's Hall of Fame.
I was just thinking because the main reason that I heard they were inducted NWO, and so I just said I forgot a few names last year.
Yeah.
That people want to thank, and if they could just shoehorn me into this year's ceremony, I could thank the people I forgot to last year.
Yeah, I mean, what's the strategy here? Are we going to thank the people that you forgot? Are you going to re-thank some people? Is it going to be a thing where you're primarily thanking people in the context of the NWO?
Yeah.
That's what
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the people I forgot, like Kane and different, a couple people.
Yeah.
But mainly like about some of the people that made that work, like Kevin Sullivan.
Yeah.
Great book. He booked us strong as fuck, Sam.
I mean, yeah, he did. I don't think any group's ever been booked stronger than the NWO.
And it needed to be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it worked at the end of the day.
Yeah. And also like no one thinks about this, but like all that energy and that attitude and all that we brought on camera with us and projected, we got that from hip hop. We got that from West Side Connection. Go listen to West Side Connection album right now. When you get off of this, listening to this or watching this, you'll see where we got a lot of that stuff from. I'm
glad that you brought up the hip hop connection because that was also a thing, like, especially as more people started joining and like, I feel like Scott Hall would slip in hip hop references constantly. You would, Conan would, like, all nothing but hip hop references, which that wasn't happening in wrestling. But something that I literally just found out this week from listening to your podcast was I was positive that X-Pac was from Tupac, and that, Conan had thought of it. When I found out that it was a Hogan nickname, that Hogan had gave you the nickname based on six-pack, like a six-pack of beer, I was like, what? No way.
But once you hear the story, you can go, okay, yeah, I see that.
I mean, it makes total sense. Like, once you say it, I'm like, yeah, I guess so. But you all had the intelligence to spell it PAC. Like, and just turn it into that.
Rather quickly.
Hey, was the name Six? Obviously the sixth member. But it was the fact that it was 1 + 2 + 3. Was that ever actually a part of it? Or was that something that later, it's just convenient that 1 + 2 + 3 was 6?
I think it had something to do with it. Because I think Eric might have thought about it with, like numerology.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it seemed like that was just as big a part as, sixth member, because obviously I wasn't really the sixth member, was I?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I guess that it's all intentional, right? Like 6 was just an important part of where you were at. Do you think, I would think that now, right? When you look at who's in the Hall of Fame, I think that it's pretty easy to make the case that the 1, 2, 3 kid is a Hall of Famer, right? Like, I mean, they've let a lot of people in on various different levels, and I think that that's important too. You can't just let the guy in the main event in every year, and that's who's in the Hall of Fame. Like, it's like the 1, 2, 3 kid. Number one, I think was a pretty impactful character in general, but number two, I feel like the 1, 2, 3 kid really introduced the idea of cruiserweights to WWE as credible offense. Like, you having any offense whatsoever, at all in the beginning of what you were doing was new to WWE, and I feel like I just feel like it had a big impact. And anybody that watched wrestling from 93 to 95 remembers 1, 2, 3 kid. Do you feel like that's in the cards? Is it something that you even think about at this point? Like, what would you do if you were like, I'm going in for a third time?
You know how they do that legacy inductions?
Yeah.
Where they just have a bunch of people and they throw, if they really want to do that, do it that way. I don't want, I've had enough of me. Okay?
Yeah. Just throw you on the Tron. Do it in between 2 other speeches and move on.
Yes.
That's great.
No.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, because then I was like, well, yeah, obviously if there was going to be a solo induction, it would have to be 1, 2, 3 kid. But then I was like, well, technically there was X Factor era X-Pac. But I feel like DX took care of X-Pac, right? Okay.
Yeah, we're good on that. Hey, so that style you're talking about? That's the main event. That's their main style they work there now.
Absolutely.
That's the heavyweight style now.
And yeah, I mean, not only is it their heavyweight style, but I swear, when I saw you as the 1, 2, 3 kid, and I would talk to my friends about it the next day, oh, you got to watch Raw. This guy beat Razor Ramon. I was like, he probably was skinnier than you, and he probably weighed 110 pounds, and he was probably this small, but you were bigger than half the guys on the roster now back then, right?
I was 205 or 210.
Yeah.
I had baby fat, a chubby face, and
yeah, man.
Bloaty, bloat.
So funny. Well, look, man. I'm happy for you. I think it's amazing. I just think it's a great part of the story. I don't know if you're going to be able to beat entering into the Hall of Fame on a tank, but I love that, it just works out so well that you were able to be an impactful part of wrestling history with 2 groups of your best friends. You get to go in with 2 of your best friends the first year and the other 2 of your best friends the next year, because this is what you did. I just think I think it's so cool. And I'm happy for you.
Yeah, it's yeah, Sam. Talk about my life and all that. And and the things that have happened, but like the things that are currently happening now in my life are amazing too, right? Like this stuff, and just like I'm like happy. I have a great relationship with my kids.
Yes.
You know, I have a great relationship with my lady, and you know, all of that. So
Yeah.
yeah, man.
And you get to bring your kid now 2 years in a row to see you get inducted. It's awesome.
That's crazy.
It's
All
awesome.
right, man.
Well, I can't wait to see you there, man. I really appreciate you making the time. I know you got a lot going on, so this was great, man.
I'm about to go have a 2-pound Maine lobster pot pie.
Oh my!
Bourbon.
You already know your order and everything, huh? Well, you go enjoy that, man. Live the high life. I mean, you from now until you not only get to. I feel like, you know, you get to be a Hall of Famer for a year, and then when the next class comes in, it's like people are talking about that class. But now you get extended another year, so you get to be the man even longer. Yeah.
Real quick, I don't mean to like go backwards, but like I do understand like a lot of people won't like that should be going into WWE or into the Hall of Fame, you know, will never end up like there's just so many people, and here I am 2 years in a row, and like, you know, I don't take that for granted, and I understand like wow, some people might roll their eyes at that. I get it, you know.
Yeah.
I am getting my ring, however.
yeah, you're not gonna turn it down. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like you can
do it all that.
Right. You can understand some of the you can understand the criticism, but who among us would take that phone call and go, you know what? No thanks, not for me. Nobody. It's not gonna happen. If they give you 5 rings, take all 5 rings. I love it, man. I can't wait to see it, and I can't wait to be there to see it.
nWo, obviously, it's still alive. All right.
I mean, it's all still alive, but you know, you saying that Bischoff's head was up Hogan's ass or whatever. I mean, that was a big moment. It was strong. All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.